Chris Merlino show is on the road this week. Tonight we're going to discuss the Balenciaga fiasco, as well as an unusual acronym that it turned out isn't new, but it is new to me, and it's one I will happily use from here on out. Get ready for another exciting episode of Chris Merlino. Welcome, everybody, to the Chris Merlino show. I am Chris Merlino. As you can see, I am not in the studios in Northfield, New Jersey, Intel Studios for this week. We are on the road somewhere at an undisclosed location deep in the heart of the great state of Connecticut. But we do have a road show. The road studio is in effect tonight. I am sitting here behind this. That is the Chris Merlino Show Road Studio mic, the Yeti microphone. And so from time to time, I'm going to have to travel for my job. And then when that's the case, we're going to bring the studio microphone. We are going to bring a laptop, and that's going to constitute the entire Chris Merlino Show studio. No phone calls tonight, but you can have your thoughts read on air if you shoot me an email at chrismerlinoshow@gmail.com. And I am monitoring the email, so I will be here ready, especially if you have something sufficiently ridiculous, stupid, moronic, anything ignorant or particularly sexist or racist or homophobic. We are equal opportunity offenders here, so I'm prepared to let you vent, and because that's what we're all about. A couple things I want to talk about. I'll tell you what. So I want to get into this Balenciaga thing first, though. As you may or may not have heard, Herschel Walker, it looks like he's not going to win that Georgia Senate seat versus Raphael Warnock. It looks like he is going to lose by a couple points, which was about what we expected. It was going to take a pretty significant effort to get him over the top once he failed to reach 50 in the general, and that's mainly due to just some technical things, not the least of which is having the popular governor on the ticket with him. Walker's just not a strong enough candidate to beat the Democrat machine. They were going to pour a lot of money into that. That seat was important. For those of you who think it wasn't important, and I'm just going to be real quick about this, for those of you who think it wasn't particularly important because it didn't tip the balance, but it did make a huge difference. It did two things. The first thing it did, what it's going to do, is it gives the Democrats a clear majority, 51-49, which means they don't need the vice president to break a tie unless they lose one of their votes. But what it does is it tips the balance to majority Democrat, which means it has a lot to do with the majority number of people on all the committees. So now there's not 50-50 majorities or 50-50 splits on the committees that the Senate holds. And so they basically run all of the committees the same way that the Republicans will run committees in the House. So that was a huge loss, a disaster. Anybody who says that this year's election wasn't a complete disaster is kidding themselves. I mean, it's a great thing to win the House. Barely won it, barely got through. And I consider that to be, it's a moderate success, but it's a C minus performance. It was an absolute disaster of an election, in my opinion. It doesn't mean that there's not any good that came out of it. But it does mean that there are serious hurdles. The election revealed serious hurdles. There was a red wave. People say there wasn't a red wave. You didn't see it in the national elections, but you did see it. Well, first off, you saw it in certain places like Florida, places like Texas, even in New York, where Zeldin lost his governorship. He managed to drag 3 Republicans into Congress. Even though he didn't win, he managed to help the Republicans secure that slim majority, but it is a majority, so that is a good thing. So Zeldin was a success, and so that is the one good thing that came out of it. The red wave also was seen throughout the country in school boards, a lot of school board elections. I talked about South Carolina school board, which was elected based on parents looking to fight over curriculum in the schools, and it is that's a big thing, and I am, as difficult as it's going to be to deal with the national stuff, because the Democrats are going to go just absolutely berserk in the next 2 years. It could get very, very dicey now that they're really only one vote away. They still need to get their all of the Democrats on board, but where Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin were the two holdouts when it came to things like doing away with the filibuster or over the high spending. Now only one of them needs to be flipped in order for the vice president to be able to break a tie. I think it's going to be really difficult for either one of them to hold out if the other doesn't. So it's going to be a tricky next couple of years. So I'm hoping that the Republicans find a way to get their act together. But what we need to do is focus politically. We need to focus on the local things, the school boards, those local elections, getting young, up-and-coming conservatives in office at the school board level, at the local government level, where we'll see people start to grow, learn politics, maybe grow from that school board into citywide, statewide, and then perhaps national elections. And the one thing I'll say about politics, the Republicans are going to have to figure out how to win elections with the rules that are set up, basically rules that the Democrats have put in place, because it doesn't seem like they're all going away. We certainly didn't win the races on the right that we needed to win in order to overturn or change these rules. So the Republicans need to fight where they can to change the rules, but where they can't, the Republicans need to get in the game under the rules that are there. You have to still win elections. If you're just going to stand off to the sidelines and say, well, we're not going to participate in the early voting, we're not going to do the ballot harvesting, we're not going to early vote, we're not going to do all the things that are available to us. We're going to tie our hands behind our back over some ridiculous sense of tradition and what's right and wrong. There is no concern for right and wrong on the other side. You have to win in order to right the wrong. So it's all about figuring out what the rules are going to be, getting a ground game in place, getting people ready to match the Democrats' efforts in these different areas, and then maybe you pick up an election or two. What if you had a ground game in some of these states where the Republicans lost by nominal margins, where they're in runoffs, they're a point behind, they're a couple thousand votes away. All you have to do, to get those votes is to be playing the game the way it's set up. But if you're not going to do that, then you're always going to be behind the eight ball. You're always going to be struggling. You're always going to be playing catch up, and you're always going to be at the whims of these rules and the people running the elections. I mean, just in Arizona, it was Katie Hobbs, the governor, was in charge of the elections that she's in charge of counting the votes, in charge of the runoff, in charge of everything. So, to win that, you have to be aware that you've got to win by a margin that'll put her, whatever she's doing to help herself, out of reach. Make it impossible for these people to win. So that's really all I have to say about the elections. I want to get into this Balenciaga thing. So I saw this a couple of weeks ago. I decided to wait and see how it would all shake out. I have a rule about breaking news, um, especially news that's going to be controversial. Um, I have a rule. So basically, I don't care if I'm the first to get out there with my opinion or anything like that. What I want to do is report facts, and I want at least the facts that I'm reporting on and that I'm analyzing to be accurate. So I want to be as certain as I can that I'm reporting what happened accurately. And I don't want to report on things and find out that I had the facts wrong. It's a little more difficult, especially when I'm doing a weekly show, because I can't correct myself the next day. I have to wait a whole week. And so when controversy does happen, I want to know what happened before I give my analysis. So in Balenciaga, and if you don't know who they are, they're a huge name in the world of high fashion. So what happened was they got caught using children in a photo shoot that included BDSM paraphernalia, and documents from a Supreme Court case dealing with an effort to soften child porn laws, or to kind of do a dive into the child porn laws and pull out some allowances, essentially just change the laws a little bit to make it a little more, I guess, I guess you would say, to make it a little more easy on people who want to engage in child pornography. Get into that in a minute. But I had an immediate reaction myself when I saw the ads and I saw the controversy. Again, I didn't dig into it. I just happened upon it because it broke so loudly right before Thanksgiving, or a week or two before Thanksgiving. So the lead up to Thanksgiving, all this was going on. So I had an immediate reaction to it, but I held off because there's a lot of big names involved. There's certainly a lot of emotion swirling around the issue. So I just wanted to make sure I had the facts, which I think more or less now the facts are what they are, and they're out there. So we're going to go through this step by step. I want to come at it from a few perspectives. So we're going to stay on this for a minute or two. And by the way, this show is just going to go until I run out of steam here. I'm going to do I have a couple of things I want to talk about. So it may not be the full 7 to 9. I'm not going to have any breaks. I'm just going to plow through. And it's going to be kind of Balenciaga heavy for a little while here. So I definitely want to come at it from a couple angles. I want to flesh it all out, because there is the actual incident, which is one thing, but then there's the response from certain celebrities and the media, obviously, which all of that has been kind of fascinating myself, to say the least. And the media's way that the media reports on story, and that's the more telling issue with these stories. It's always telling to check out how the media reports. Remember, we went through this before, and again, I want to be connecting the politics to current events to culture, and so we kind of see how it all ties together. So this story is a kind of a case study of sorts. I'm going to read mostly from this New York Times article written by 3 women: Elizabeth Patton, Vanessa Friedman, and Jessica Testa. I don't know who they are. I'm assuming that they are involved in the fashion reporting side of things, because that's mostly who was on this and prior to it breaking. This piece was published on Friday, December 2nd, and it was under the headline, "When High Fashion and QAnon Collide." So right off the bat, and this is where you can see, if you know what to look for with the way these articles are written, it's a lot of it you can tell by the headline. So when they say when high fashion and QAnon collide, you see the story. The real story is about what the fashion company Balenciaga did. Right? That's the story. They did something, and then people reacted to it. So it's not about what QAnon said or did as a response, or what anybody else said or did. But these writers, they have to appease their readers, the New York Times readers, which, let's face it, New York Times readers are not likely to care very much about a fashion company using, child porn references and child exploitation, BDSM scenes in an ad campaign. I'm just saying, that's the left for you. But anyway, that's basically who you're dealing with, and that's who these people are writing to. So it's not a terrible surprise that they're going at it from this angle. But this is from the piece, quote, "Two new Balenciaga campaigns ignited a firestorm that traveled from the internet to Fox News, fueled by allegations that the brand condoned child exploitation." Close quote. So from the internet to Fox News again. I wonder if you caught that. You have to understand how Fox News triggers their readers, the New York Times readers, the left in general. This sentence here, this opening sentence, is designed to let their readers know that no one else in the media would have bothered with the story. It's a Fox News thing. It was the internet, which, you can never trust the internet. And then it went from the internet to Fox News. So of all these, untrustworthy sources to the left, designed to let them know that, it's already a story that's really a nothing story because look who's reporting on it, and I don't doubt that they're right about that the other sources wouldn't have reported on it, which I'll talk about in a minute. Back to the piece, quote, "Ever since Dema," which refers to Demna Gvasalia, became artistic director of Balenciaga in 2015, the storied brand has become a lightning rod for controversy, often intentionally so. All right, so this designer is a person who creates marketing campaigns that are supposed to be shocking. That's the point. They're supposed to be controversial. So this is really, at least as far as he's concerned, the designer, just another controversial campaign, right? I mean, this is what he does. Each only bolstered the reputation of Demna's Balenciaga as a brand that forces consumers to grapple with the very meaning of taste, in quotes. Now, however, the release of two new campaigns by Balenciaga, which is owned by Kering, a French luxury conglomerate that also, by the way, they also own brands like Gucci, Saint Laurent, has taken the public, I don't even know what this word is, opprobrium to a new level. One campaign featured photos of children clutching handbags that look like teddy bears in bondage gear. Another campaign featured photos that include paperwork about child pornography laws. Together, they ignited a firestorm that traveled from the internet, again, the internet to Fox News, fueled by allegations that Balenciaga condoned child exploitation. The controversy has become one of the most explicit collisions of internet culture, politics, fashion, and conspiracy theories to date. So again, the specific mention of Fox News, because without Fox, no other major news outlet would have cared about any of this. When that is probably true. And they also throw the idea of a conspiracy in there as well, as though, a major marketing campaign by one of the most famous fashion companies in the world is not something that is thought through all the way to the last minute detail, right? These fashion companies, they are professionals. They don't leave things to chance. They don't just slap a set together, take a few pictures, and throw it up on Times Square, on the screens in Times Square, throw it up on the screens at Fashion Week in Paris. That's just not how it works. These are very well thought out, very attention to detail oriented. Every single thing on that set was there on purpose. But the New York Times wants to frame this so it looks like it's being blown, out of proportion, way out of proportion. That is really just another case of Republicans pounce. Do you know what that phrase means? Republicans pounce. That has to do with the way news is covered by the leftist media. So in a nutshell, when the left does something good or that the media likes, they report on the story. So-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, whatever. Normal reporting, and usually the coverage is fawning, about how great the person is or what they did was, but the point is they focus on the actual story, what actually happened. Now, if the left does something bad, for example, if they promote child pornography, or conduct a drag queen story hour, or like a public library or school, or if they hold a family night drag show at a strip club and have children throwing money at drag queens, strippers, and putting dollars in the drag queen strippers G-string, all of which we've seen just in this past year. Anytime one of these stories breaks, the leftist media reports are always focused on the right's reaction to the event, rather than the despicable event itself. So whenever you hear the phrase like Republicans pounce, or Republicans seize on this, or any other phrase like that, anything that places emphasis of the story on the reaction of conservatives or Republicans or right-wing media, then the real story looks really bad for the left. And so that's basically what I'm trying to get at. And these are things I want you to know about how the news is reported, so you can start to spot them yourselves. They're all over the place. The term fake news is not really about phony stories or made up stories. What that term really refers to has more to do with what gets reported on, how it gets reported on. So the news media decides what stories are going to run, and more importantly, what stories they'll ignore and suppress. The most obvious of those would be the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. This was a story that was suppressed at first, then it was framed as Russian disinformation once the big tech oligarchs censored it. And that was how they cleaned up that mess going into the presidential election. Usually they'll just ignore a story that hurts the left. But if the story can't be ignored, like things like rising inflation, gas prices, the border, et cetera, they don't even report on those half the time. You don't hear a word about the border crisis virtually at all. But the stuff they can't stop the public from seeing, they frame it in the best possible light for the left. When the right calls them out or focuses its attention on what is really going on, then it's Republicans pounce. So Balenciaga develops a marketing campaign. Actually, there's two campaigns at issue here. One has a seriously sickening series of photographs which include little children. And I'm talking about kids here. I'm talking about toddlers or maybe a little older than that, not much older. We're not talking about high school kids here. Not that would be okay, but we're talking about very young children who have no idea what they're being used for. And these photos show these kids holding teddy bears that are dressed in like bondage type attire. And in the other campaign, that what's they call the guard robe campaign, which was shot, I believe, over the summer, but separately from what they call the I forget what the other one was. I forget what the teddy bear one was called. The gift shop campaign. There are pages in this other campaign. There are pages which can be seen. They're printouts from a Supreme Court case, United States versus Williams, which is a 2008 case that considered whether certain laws that banned the promotion of child pornography, whether or not those laws curtailed for the First Amendment. So in that case, the court, in 2008 case, the court wrongly decided that while child pornography was illegal, and so was promoting it, the dissemination and promotion of what they call virtual child pornography, i.e. cartoons, CGI, adults, dressed and made up to appear very young, so forth, they're all okay because they're not really children. So it was a sick decision, but that's what they decided. And the left celebrates that decision because it allows them to dip their toe into child porn, which they absolutely want to be able to do. And that just sets up a campaign like this Balenciaga campaign. All right, so now the fallout to the campaign began on November 16th when Balenciaga published a campaign called the Balenciaga Gift Shop, which is what the teddy bears. It was shot in October by a guy named Gabriele Galimberti. He's an Italian documentary photographer. His work focuses on like stories are things tell us about themselves. That's what the report says. Mr. Galimberti had previously, this is back to the piece, had previously made a book featuring images of children with their toys, but he had never shot a fashion campaign before. His photographs featured 6 children clutching destroyed teddy bear handbags, which had first been seen in the brand's spring 2023 runway show in Paris. The fluffy teddy bears had black eyes, fishnet tops, and leather harnesses. Wine glasses and other gift items were displayed around them. Mr. Galimberti had nothing to do with the Guard Robe campaign, which is the one with the Supreme Court documents. He also did not make the decision to feature children with the bear bags in the gift shop campaign. He said that Balenciaga had told him the theme of the shoot was punk. Look, the photographer, there's blame to go around. The photographer is not to blame for the set, and he's not to blame for the theme of the set or anything that was actually in the photos. His job in these situations, what a photographer's job to do is to come in and set the lighting up for the shots and then to take the pictures. Now, that said, if you're a photographer and you walk onto a set where kids are being used in this way, you need to call it out. You need to refuse to take out your camera, certainly. There is some responsibility here for the photographer, but not ultimate responsibility on the set. He should have refused to be a part of the whole disgusting mess. That was his big mistake. But back to the people. Again, so there is blame to go around. It's just none of this was his idea, I guess would be the best way to put it. So Balenciaga in its November 28th statement. Okay, so this is about 2 weeks after the initial reports came out about it. Their statement said, quote, "Our plush bear bags and the gift collection should not have been featured with children. This was a wrong choice by Balenciaga, combined with our failure in assessing and validating images. The responsibility for this lies with Balenciaga alone." In other words, don't blame the photographer. But the nuance was lost amid the heat of the reaction. So, since the gift shop campaign images were released, Mr. Galimberti said he's been inundated with hate mail and death threats, and has had jobs canceled, and has had personal details, including his phone number, published online. Quote, "At the moment, nobody wants to be associated with my name because my name is associated with the word pedophilia everywhere," Mr. Galimberti said. "I've been working on my personal projects for 25 years, and then everything is destroyed by this campaign. I'm not sleeping well. My family's completely worried." End quote. Again, this is a shame, and I don't condone any threats or hate mail or anything like that. You can make your voice heard respectfully and with a little class, especially if you're on the right. There's no need to threaten a person's life. That's not your role, and that's what the left does. We don't do that. So, if you're inclined to make your voice heard, you can call out a bad decision or something that was done in poor taste, but we can do it without threats. He made a mistake, and there are idiots out there who just want to spew venom, and that goes for the right and the left. But if you're on the right and you're trying to make a point, that's not the way to do it. It's a waste of time, and it just doesn't get you anywhere. If you go online and you can see these images, I'll tell you what, they're exactly how they sound. Each image shows a child, a toddler-age child, maybe a little older, holding a teddy bear, which is dressed, and it's a teddy bear handbag, apparently. So they're holding it, and the teddy bear is dressed in a BDSM bondage outfit. And why would they need to have kids involved in this kind of scene makes one wonder, doesn't it? It makes you think about what else they have on their minds. And I'll tell you what they have on their minds. It's the same thing the rest of the left has had on their minds. It's the same thing the left has had on their minds since, the 60s, maybe even before that. They want your kids. All right. They want to normalize sexual deviancy in adults. And what they do is they soften us up for the normalization of pedophilia. And how do they soften us up? And that's just by introducing this stuff little by little, pushing the envelope little by little. And eventually you soften up and you start to allow things. You think it's far-fetched? Do you really need me to go through how we got to where we are right now? We've literally redefined words to fit the LGBTQ agenda. Marriage meant something at one point in the past. I don't know if you remember that. At one point, we knew the difference between men and women. Is this all what's going on now? Didn't all happen at once. It seems like it's happening quickly, but I think I gave you that Hemingway quote before. It happens slowly, then all of a sudden. First the left, the homosexual left just wanted to be left alone. After all, if a man wanted to have sex with other men, what do you care? Just leave them alone. What they do in the privacy of their own bedrooms, in their own homes, is of no concern to anyone else. And we were like, yeah, sure, fair enough. Do what you do, and we'll stay out of your bedroom. Well, then they began to make their relationships more public. They began to sprinkle homosexuality into the culture, into movies, on TV. Celebrities began to be more outspoken about their sexuality. And why not? After all, they shouldn't have to hide who they are, should they? Why shouldn't they have representation in movies and TV shows? It's just representing real life, after all, right? And we were like, yeah, sure. I guess that's fair. It's true. There's some truth to it. Then they just wanted to be able to take advantage of the same tax benefits as married folks. They just want to be able to visit their partner in the hospital, just like a married man would go visit his wife, or vice versa. They just wanted the relationships to be taken seriously, to be official. So we said, culturally, okay, well, why not create a civil union? Give you everything you want. You can visit your partner in the hospital. You can leave you can use them in your taxes, in the same way a married couple can. So the civil union was, the gay equivalent of being married. But then they said they wanted their unions to be considered marriages, and we were like, no, I don't think so. Marriage actually has a definition. It means something, and marriage is different than any other relationship. But they didn't care. They didn't care. They want what they want. They didn't care that there was a definition. They don't care that people in society did not agree with them. And so rather than, again, the American people also rejected this over and over, even in places like California, for a very long time. And so even though the American people had rejected it, they went to court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and in a 5-4 decision, another bad decision by the court gave the left what they wanted, basically a redefinition of marriage to include homosexual unions. And now here we are up to our eyeballs in redefinitions as the LGBTQ agenda steamrolls across America. We're being asked to accept boys in girls' bathrooms, boys on girls' sports teams, boys in the girls' locker room. We're told a man who thinks he's a woman actually is a woman, and that these men are winning awards that are supposed to go to women. Obese, bearded men are winning beauty pageants. Drag queens are in libraries reading cartoon or fairy tales and stories to children. Children are being invited to drag queen strip clubs. I mentioned it before. Kids are being told to put dollars into the thongs of grown men who are gyrating on stage, dancing sexually and seductively in front of these kids. All of this is taking place right now in communities all across the country, even in red states where you'd think that they would not stand for this. It is happening. It's happening everywhere, and it's being accepted and pushed from the highest levels of our government. Remember, the President of the United States, just look at his administration. First off, he's inviting transvestites to the White House to have a summit about womanhood. So Biden is absolutely on board for all this. And just look at the officials in his administration. He's got Dr. Rachel Levine, a man who is dressed like and thinks he is a woman. And he's the Assistant Secretary for Health at the Health and Human Services. It's not an insignificant post for a mentally ill person to hold. Don't forget what's his name? The monkeypox czar, Dmitry Daskalakis or something like Daskalakis. Daskalakis. This guy's got pentagram tattoos. He's got numerous public photos of himself wearing fetish BDSM gear. This is the kind of thing people used to be humiliated about if it ever came out, if pictures were ever revealed. This is the stuff of blackmail, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. What about Sam Brinton? Have you heard of Sam Brinton lately? He's the androgynous sleazebag who was given the job of Deputy Assistant Secretary of Spent Fuel and Waste Disposition in the Office of Nuclear Energy. He, of course, goes by they, them pronouns, which I'm not using. And he's also the disgusting scumbag who's just a few weeks ago stole a woman's luggage bag from a flight on which Sam Britton did not bring a bag of his own. So he had no luggage on the flight, so he can't claim he grabbed it by mistake. Shouldn't even have been in the luggage area. But he stole a bag, stole the woman's clothes out of it, probably because he's a degenerate with a fetish of whatever sort that makes him want to steal and wear other women's clothes. But these are just off the top of my head examples of the depravity going on just in Biden's administration. It's seriously shocking stuff. So don't tell me we're far off from this child exploitation being accepted. Back to the piece. On November 28th, almost 2 weeks after the storm started brewing and after a series of Instagram apologies that failed to quell it, the brand issued a statement admitting a series of grievous errors for which Balenciaga takes responsibility. The fashion house announced ongoing internal and external investigations and new controls, and said it was reaching out to organizations who specialize in child protection and aim at ending child abuse and exploitation. We want to learn from our mistakes and identify ways we can contribute, the statement read. 5 days later, on December 2nd, the two men at the top of Balenciaga, so Demna, the designer, and the chief executive, Cedric Charbit, issued separate statements of apology. Mr. Charbit's statement included a list of several actions he and the company have taken, including reorganizing its image department and planning a listening tour to engage with advocacy groups who aim to protect children. Then the statement said the designer took responsibility for the inappropriate images. As much as I would like, this is quote, as much as I would sometimes like to provoke a thought in my work, I would never have an intention to do that with such an awful subject as child abuse that I condemn, period. Well, not period, right? I mean, you're saying this now, but I don't think I'm ready to accept this is some kind of mistake. Like you just tripped and fell and clattered down the stairs, and now there's a bunch of child exploitation material in your campaign. You don't just get to walk away from this like it's a small thing with just an apology. This is huge. All right, it's important. It's outrageous. It's seriously disgusting and depraved, and it involves children. So you don't get a second chance here. I believe in second chances for most mistakes and crimes and so forth. But if you're hurting children, if you're exploiting children or pushing the exploitation of children or even suggesting it, or if you're on the child porn bandwagon, I just don't believe in second chances for you. But not long after the gift shop campaign was posted online, a groundswell of outrage began against the images that juxtaposed children and what looked like bondage paraphernalia. 5 days later, on November 21st, Balenciaga released a separate campaign, the brand's 2023 Guard Rope advertising campaign. Social media users zoomed in on images from the campaign that appeared to feature as a prop paperwork from a Supreme Court decision on child pornography laws. So once you draw attention to yourself with one campaign that does something stupid and sick and whatever, people are going to be looking for it in everything else you release. So it's not a terrible surprise that this was picked up, but I'm sure it was noticed, particularly because of this, in light of the scandal that was already under scrutiny. The Guard Rope campaign, which included, now this are some people here, included Nicole Kidman, Isabel Huppert, and Bella Hadid as models. It was shot in July, months before the gift shop campaign, and took place in an office setting. Looks in the campaign were introduced in a May 2022 show at New York Stock Exchange. In one of its images, a $3,000 Balenciaga and Adidas Hourglass handbag was featured on a desk, along with printed copies of the Supreme Court's 2008 decision U.S. versus Williams. And again, that was a case that examined whether laws banning the promoting of child pornography, whether that curtailed First Amendment freedom of speech rights. Other props in the Guard Rope campaign included the books The Cremaster Cycle by Matthew Barney, which appeared in conjunction with an exhibit of the artists at the Guggenheim Museum in New York. Now, just to be clear, if your work is featured in the Guggenheim, it is probably a piece of crap. I've been to the Guggenheim and it sucks, like a lot. The so-called art in there is stupid. It's not art, it's garbage. Anyways, As Sweet as It Gets was also in the shot, which is by the Belgian painter Michael Bormans, whose work has been shown in at the David Zwirner Gallery. The gallery, this is the gallery. The gallery has described Mr. Borman's painting as, quote, toddlers engaged in playful but mysterious acts with sinister overtones and insinuations of violence. Now, this is how the gallery describes his work, and it's supposed to put his piece in the best possible light. Doesn't it sound disgusting to you? Do you want to see it? It sounds like depraved garbage to me. Some critiques have included images from both campaigns in a way that suggests they are one and the same. So remember, these are two separate shoots. One Twitter user who shared photos from the two shoots wrote, the brand Balenciaga just did an interesting photo shoot for their new products recently, which included a very purposely poorly hidden court document about virtual child porn. Normal stuff. Now, that tweet, among other posts, prompted accusations that Balenciaga was promoting child pornography campaign and glamorizing violence against children. Now, I don't see what difference it makes whether it was one Balenciaga campaign or two. In fact, I would probably be inclined to downplay the fact that we're talking about two campaigns here, two isolated campaigns that have nothing to do with one another. Because what does that show? You've got these two separate campaigns with two different but related items, related scenes and scenarios. Shows now when you have one thing that's an isolated incident, but when you have a second one, what starts to develop is what is commonly known as a pattern, right? And if we're detectives investigating this, you see one act, all right, well, that's one thing, but now you see another one that is related. You start to put together a pattern, which means that it really wasn't unintentional. And so, but the fact that a Twitter user, combined it into one tweet and made it out to sound like one campaign, I think that's actually plays in favor of Balenciaga. The fact is, it's just two separate campaigns with two separate issues, but basically related to child exploitation at the very least. So two campaigns to me equals an even bigger issue than just one incident that they, screwed up. You could chalk that up to a mistake. The question is, how does Balenciaga respond? Their first responses to the backlash came on November 24th when it apologized for the gift shop. Again, we sincerely apologize for any offense our holiday campaign may have caused. Our plush bear bag should not have been featured with children in this campaign. We immediately removed the campaign from all platforms. So they did at least cease the campaign. That was a statement that Balenciaga posted to their Instagram on November 24th. And hours later, a second apology addressing the Guard Road campaign was posted to the brand's Instagram stories. And that read, "We apologize for displaying unsettling documents in our campaign. We take this matter very seriously and are taking legal action against the parties responsible for creating the set and including unapproved items for our Spring 23 campaign photo shoot. We strongly condemn abuse of children in any form. We stand for children's safety and well-being." Well, no, you don't. All right, you don't. You don't, right? Not really. What happened was he got busted doing what you wanted to do, with sending the message you wanted to send. The wrong people saw it. That's what happened. The wrong people got wind of it. And now word's out that your company is degenerate and you don't like that. And in the fashion world, now the funny thing to me is in the fashion world, I would think that this was the norm. These are strange people. I mean, models, fashion designers. It's not an environment I think I'd be very comfortable in. I have a real problem with that level of like degenerate sexual behavior. It's hard to shock me, but I think those people would shock me to no end. Anyway, from back to the piece. On November 25th, Balenciaga filed papers in New York, and this was interesting, initiating a $25 million lawsuit against the production company North 6 and Nicolas Desjardins, who designed the set for the Guard Robe campaign. North Six had produced previous Balenciaga campaigns. They've also produced for like Dior, Zara, according to their website. Mr. Desjardins' recent work includes the disco horse from the cover of Beyonce's Renaissance. So the document, a summons with notice, alleged that the production company and set designer engaged in inexplicable acts and omissions that were malevolent, or at the very least, extraordinarily reckless. So effectively, the brand claimed that the documents were placed in the campaign photographs without their knowledge, and had led to false associations between Balenciaga and child pornography. When we contacted by the New York Times, North Six, which manages production details like catering, permits, and crew, they declined to comment. On December 2nd, a week after Balenciaga's initial court filing, the company announced it was no longer taking legal action. So let me lay this out in a nutshell for you. Balenciaga sued to make a statement that they won't stand for this kind of irresponsibility on their campaigns. The idea was to get the public, to make the public feel like Balenciaga takes it seriously, that it wasn't their fault. These other people that they hired to run their campaigns and to handle all of the details, they're the ones that screwed up. The company doesn't, they're not interested in pornography, child pornography and stuff like that, and they're going to sue and now get off our backs. But they pulled the suit. Now, it's important to understand what happens if you haven't really studied the justice system and how it works, because if they go through, if you sue and you go through with the lawsuit, remember, defendants get to defend themselves, right? They get to ask questions. They get to subpoena. They get to make statements. And more importantly, they get to have what's called discovery. They get to subpoena things like, say, company emails and memos and voicemail, whatever they can, digital copies of this stuff. They get to track down all the back and forth where there was communication, what Balenciaga wanted in their campaign, all that, and they'll find all the renderings of the set, the mock-ups, the artistic drawings that tell you, okay, this is what it's going to look like. And it will look very bad for Balenciaga because it will demonstrate that they're liars and degenerate scumbags, just like we all think right now. But better to be thought of in that regard than to open up your emails and your memos and all of those documents and eliminate all doubt. So what happens now, long-term repercussions, obviously we're early, this just happened. Balenciaga's taking a hit. They've taken it right on the chin. Already trade publication Business of Fashion on November 28th revoked an award that it had planned to give to Demna, saying it held the safety of children in the highest regard. In the United States, home to the world's largest luxury market, the reputational damage from the continuing firestorm. Now, they're saying here it could be seismic for Balenciaga. It's a brand that's more used to being applauded for its ability to tap into the culture, the cultural moment, so to speak. And they're more used to that than to be excoriated on the level that they're being now. I don't know how long the fallout's going to last, or even what the financial fallout's really going to be. They're going to lose some money early on. They're going to lose some support. Certain people will probably stay away from go, but I think in the long run they'll be fine. Although Kering doesn't break down the annual revenue for Balenciaga, HSBC estimates that the fashion house generated about 1.76 billion euros, which is the equivalent of $1.81 billion in sales in 2021. As of Monday, there were no plush bondage bear handbags for sale on Balenciaga's website. However, there was a dog bowl with spikes for $848 for a dog bowl with spikes on it. A trio of Christmas tree ornaments, including a puffer jacket, a sneaker with a handbag for $740, a candle holder shaped like an empty soda can for $625. And the funny thing is, they wiped their Instagram page for a while. Balenciaga did, and all they had for a while was their apology. There are 2 apologies on there. I'm not sure if they're back up and running on social media right now, but that was the situation The last time I checked, the social media ire here has moved beyond the brand, and there's a lot of people involved. People like Kim Kardashian, people like the models who are in some of these campaigns. Ms. Kardashian, one of the most powerful, back to the piece, one of the most powerful celebrities in the world, walked in the Balenciaga couture runway show in July and has widely credited Demna for helping refashion her personal style in the wake of her divorce. And on November 27th, she said she was reevaluating her relationship with the brand after coming under fire for not making a comment sooner. As a mother, this is what she said back on the 27th of November on Twitter. As a mother of four, I've been shaken by the disturbing images. The safety of children must be held in the highest regard, and any attempts to normalize child abuse of any kind should have no place in our society, period. I appreciate Balenciaga's removal from the campaigns and removal of the campaigns and their apology. In speaking with them, I believe they understand the seriousness of the issue and will take the necessary measures for this never to happen again. Now, she's not dissociating herself with Balenciaga. She's not left there. She still wears Balenciaga. She's still endorsed by them. So, as is typical of the left and these powerful, the people who on the left who could do things. There's a lot of these people. So in the fashion world and in the pop culture world, Kim Kardashian is a mega star. She is a very, for whether you like her or not, she is a very, very powerful force in that world. And if she wants answers and she wants things done, she is the type of person that could get the person on the phone from any of these companies. She could get them on the phone. She could make demands. She could certainly, her voice matters in that world. And she's got the money. So, it reminds me a lot of like LeBron James and these NBA players who are their league is wrapped up in China, and they refuse to acknowledge and call out China's human rights violations with the Uyghur Muslims, the concentration camps, and all that. And the people that have the power and the not that necessarily that the NBA would be able to do anything about it, but these are some very big voices. These are people with there's a lot of money to be lost, but they have a lot of money already. I mean, LeBron James, Kim Kardashian, these are people that are, if not billionaires, they're very close to it. And, they can survive losing Balenciaga. They can survive the Chinese not letting them, do business in China. And it's disgusting that some very serious humanitarian issues and human rights issues and child pornography issues aren't enough to mobilize the most powerful people in the world, certainly in the pop culture world, to the defense of the literally the least powerful among us. It really does show you who they are and where their concerns really are. So when you hear these people come out and talk about, their altruism, their humanitarian, their how much they care about humanitarian issues and so forth, they don't ever put their money where their mouths are. They never push these big companies, these countries. They just will do nothing to embarrass them. They'll always give them the benefit of the doubt. They'll always give them their side, the final say. However, if there is one area or one group of people, more specifically, that you really, when something serious is going on, you really want these people to weigh in, because you have to turn to somebody to get the you know to tell you how to think about these things. I mean, how are you supposed to understand how to think about these things if our elite media people don't tell us? So what I want to do, we as usual, and as you'll find is my certainly my attitude towards the whole thing. I personally turn to the cackling hens of the View whenever I want um, to hear and to understand what's going on in the culture. We're going to start here with Joy Behar from The View, and this is what she thinks of the Balenciaga scandal.
So, fashion house Balenciaga, a very, posh, is under fire for a controversial fetish-themed ad campaign featuring child models. Okay? Balenciaga blames the production company for the ads. They have a kid posing with S&M stuff. But the set designer says Balenciaga executives were on the set. They knew what was happening. Are they taking a page from Trump's notebook and say, I didn't know nothing. I know nothing.
How can we make this scandal, this child porn scandal, this sexual exploitation channel, this BDSM story, this just a depraved, disgusting, degenerate move by a fashion company? How can we make that about Trump? I mean, this is a man who lives rent free in all of these people's heads, and that's really all there is to say about that. We really gets a little more detailed when the camera turned on Alyssa Farah Griffin, who had this to say.
What's going on here?
I found this ad campaign particularly distasteful in this moment. So there's growing anti-LGBTQ sentiment right now, and what's being framed is as portraying, trans people as groomers. This is a term you'll hear on the far right. They're groomers. This is where you get the anti-drag queen stuff that we're seeing.
So now that's you go from Joy who tries to make it about Trump, but Alyssa Farah Griffin, now she's focused on what's important here, right? I mean, she's lasered in on, she has diagnosed what the issue is, what is most important about this whole thing, and that's not the fact that children were put in the position of taking part in a BDSM photo shoot and that they're in the presence of these weird, sick and sexually deviant people. No, that's not important. The important, we're talking about children being put in a photo shoot that included BDSM and bondage kind of paraphernalia and child exploitation or child porn Supreme Court documents. Who said anything about the trans community? Now, what this shows is just that these people know how deviant the trans community really is. They know that accusation of groomers and all of those different terminology, those are accurate descriptions. And it's not just that the accusation isn't just, I'm not saying it isn't this, but it's not just that these people are grooming children in order so that they could have sex with the children or whatever. I think they're doing that. That is being done. But the larger picture is that the children, and this is no question this is happening, are being groomed culturally and socially. So this is the LGBTQ thing is now what they call a social contagion, meaning it's spreading through the culture the way a virus or an illness spreads through the population. It's people, because it's now become an in thing to be part of a victim group, to be part of a protected minority in a sense. Many people, and it's a chic thing. It makes your life seem a little more interesting. Oh, I'm not just one of these normal heterosexual, what they call cisgender people. No. I'm more interesting than that. I use these pronouns. You call me they and them, and I have, my sexual desires, they go from all over the place. There are some days I like this. There's other days I want that, and I'm just so much more interesting. And if they feel more interesting, and so that's a social thing that's kind of in a sense infecting kids, particularly kids. And so, yeah, that's a form of grooming. You're grooming them culturally. You're grooming them politically. You're grooming them for the sexual stuff. That's on one hand, but on the other hand, there's even a larger element and that's why you have a political party so wrapped up in it and so supportive of it. But Alyssa Farah Griffin, didn't end there. And the other thing is too. All of these alternative lifestyle choices are all connected. It's not just that there's one community, the gay community here, the trans community here, all these other, what do you call it, genders and so forth over here. All of that, it's all an interconnected group that is all supporting the agenda of the other, whatever that agenda is. But then Alyssa Farah Griffin, let's continue. She had a little more to say.
So Balenciaga played right into their hands by having kids in a sexualized manner,
Yeah,
something that represents, sex acts. I think it was a really bad misstep at a moment where it's just kind of a dangerous time to even give credence to those kind of insane.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Played right into their hands. Again, the focus is constantly on the response. You do this, you do this, and then it makes this group of people look bad. Why does it make that group of people look bad? Well, because that's doing this for what it is, who know what you're doing, who don't like it and don't want their kids involved with it, and also want to protect other kids from it. So it's all connected. And we know that. We've always known that. And those of us who don't know it are starting to learn it, and it's becoming very obvious. And the focus on in the media is that, well, you're playing right into the hands of the people. You're giving them the ammunition needed to shoot at you. But when you've got that attitude that there's no concern for the kid. What bothers me about the whole thing isn't that you're focused. Well, it is that you're focused because the fact is you're not concerned about the kids, and that's what this shows. It shows that these kids really were in these environments around these people with this paraphernalia all around them, holding it. They weren't, and in the shots they don't look happy, and that's the really sick thing is you got these kids. They look like they almost look, what they look like. They kind of look like kidnapped kids that are being sold into. You could if you told me that those pictures were children that were kidnapped from their parents and put into these, this was some kind of an online kind of child porn fetish thing, and these were all missing children, I would believe that. That's what that looks like to me. They do not look like they're happy models, modeling the cute teddy bears. Those teddy bears weren't cute. There's nothing about that was childlike or childish or that a child should have been anywhere around and exposed to. It's a disgusting thing. It's absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely deviant. But Sunny Hostin, now she's the one that we always wait for what Sunny Hostin has to say. And until Sunny weighs in, I have no idea how to think about these things. And here is Sunny Hostin's take.
I can't even show the picture because it's so distasteful. But what's also very distasteful is like Balenciaga lately. I mean, their stuff is just ugly. I mean, the bag that the little girl is holding is ugly. Do you remember when Kim came?
Yeah, so that's the way they really feel about all this. All right, and you hear them laughing and chuckling. It's so disgusting because the thing about it is they know what the complaint is, right? They know that people that are complaining, that are calling them out, that are that are bringing the public's attention to this scene, this situation. They know that the complaint is that children are being used in these depraved kind of scenes. Okay, now why can't we at least agree that that's wrong and disgusting and shouldn't be allowed and shouldn't be tolerated? I'm okay with when artists pushing the envelope, but when they push the envelope beyond where it should go and they stray into areas that are unacceptable, we need to be able to agree that a line has been crossed, and then to bring them back into where things should be. And artists are always going to do this. Now, I don't think there's anything artistic about that, but that's what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to push the envelope. It's supposed to, supposed to jar us sometimes, and we have to be able to discern between what jars us, something that's jarring, but also that speaks to the human condition, speaks to where a culture is, or where it should go, or where it wants to go, whatever, where they are believe it's heading. But sometimes even those people that are supposed to push the envelope, even those people need to be reined in. They can't just be given free rein. There's no absolute, like we say, there's no absolute right to a freedom of speech. There's no absolute right to anything. There is a line that should not be crossed, a threshold that society shouldn't be willing to accept being crossed. So that's the Balenciaga saga. We're going to call it that from now on. And what I want to do now is I want to switch over. We're going to follow that to see what, I don't really care about, like all the different celebrities and things like that. If there's anything else that happens that's important, we'll talk about it. But that's the basics of it. So if you haven't heard anything about it, or you're wondering what it's about, that's where it's at. Gonna take a quick sip here. Of course, I got my single barrel 1792. Always nice to have a little sip right before the next segment. So I want to talk about one more thing before I head out. This will be pretty quick. That there's an interesting couple of series of acronyms that have been. I guess they're not new. I never heard of them, but I love them. I think they are perfect. And sometimes an acronym, the politicians are the best at creating an acronym. That they're great at creating acronyms, and they're also great at creating acronyms that describe the bill in the least accurate way. So that's what the politicians do, and a lot of times acronyms do that. But these particular acronyms, these are people are very proud to be called these acronyms. I want to just kind of go through this real quick, because the acronyms are great and they're accurate, and I'm going to use them. But the situation, what the acronyms describe, is something that is sad and really is a shame for our society that this is a growing trend. So this is the first acronym that I want to mention is DINK, DINK. Okay. What a DINK is, what it stands for, is dual income, no kids. So this is a couple who may or may not be married. I guess you don't have to be married to be a DINK. You can be a DINK because it's dual income. So it's dual income, no kids. So you can be DINKs together if you are dating and you live. I guess you would live together, but you don't have children, and maybe you don't plan on having children. So you could be DINK. So you could get married. So if you're a DINK, well, you wouldn't be a DINK. What would you be? You just whatever. You get married to somebody else, and you're DINKs together if you don't have kids. You're DINKs. And so that's most people that do that, obviously they are what they say, what the underlying factors to becoming a dink is that you want that financial, societal, personal reasons. It's mainly for the sake of having more time to yourself, more ability to, I guess, to travel, more money. So when people get married, they don't have kids. Obviously, yeah, if you're both working, you have extra money. It's a very flexible lifestyle. You can at a whim go travel. These are people that oftentimes they are they work similar jobs to each other, or at least similar hours, similar time off, and they do a lot of stuff. They might go out to eat all the time. They might travel a lot. So dinks will travel a lot. A lot of times they'll have a lot of toys to play with, things like that. Nice houses, nice cars. They're focused on themselves, on their money, on their they might be focused on retirement. Just they have a lot because they're only focused on themselves and what they want to do. So that's if you're dinky. Now you could be dinky. You could be dinky, and that would be dual income, no kids yet. So you may not have kids yet. You may be dinks right now, but you throw that Y in there and you're dinky. That means you may plan on having kids at some point down the future. Which is better. It's better to be, so this, just so you know, it's better to be dinky than it is to be a dink. So you don't want to be if you're going to be a dink, at least be a dinky, because maybe at least you're leaving the option for kids to have kids later, But dinks are very self-centered. If you're dinky, it doesn't mean you're self-centered. You might be planning on having kids. You're just dinky now. Maybe you won't be dinky later on. You're certainly not trying to be a dink. So if you're dinky, you might not be a dink later on, but you're dinky now because you don't have kids. But if you decide to have kids, then you're no longer a dink or a dinky. And that's, I think, the best place to be. That's where I am. I have kids, so I'm not a dink, and I don't want to be considered a dink. But I'll call these people dinks because they want to be dinks. They're the dinks like being dinks, apparently, and that is I think a problem, because that just tells us that the age of the childless family is on the rise. And these acronyms, they've been around. Dinks have existed for a long time. Now I never heard it before, but apparently they've been calling themselves. There's a community, the dink community, has been around. I think this acronym came up, in the 80s. But it was a much smaller group of people. The dink community was much smaller. There were dinks everywhere, but there wasn't as many dinks around, and they weren't. I guess there wasn't a lot of social benefit to telling anybody that you were a dink, because it's basically just lets everybody know that you are a selfish, narcissistic, non-contributor to society. So a lot of these people will complain that the added cost of children are a financial nightmare. You obviously, it costs money to have kids, there's no question about that. But waiting on having children, or you're choosing not to have children, it allows you to focus on your finances, right? You can be a workaholic. You can pay off all your student loan debts, all the consumer debts you've acquired over the years. Waiting on or having no children, it can also give you an opportunity to think long term and focus on your future savings and retirement and so forth. These people, have legitimate concerns. Certainly, things like Social Security doesn't look like it's going to be around for very much longer. Retirement plans go up and down with inflation and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity to focus your money where you wouldn't be able to if you had children. Personal life goals, career moves, working on relationships, and that's what they want. These people want to do, and that's not a mainstream decision now, but it is something that's becoming more and more mainstream. So the dink will have the thing about being a dink is that you have that opportunity if something pops up and that you have the flexibility in life to participate. Now they claim that dinkism is not a path that they take to avoid responsibility. They claim it's a path that allows responsibility to grow at a larger scale. I don't know what that means, but instead of putting efforts towards things like changing diapers, wiping boogers, and teaching life lessons, couples can choose to support their community, giving back to society through developing careers and contributing philanthropically. Leaving a child to carry on your legacy is the tradition but for those who choose not to have children, their legacy is their work. Striving to leave behind something that will remind future generations what you did, small or large, a book, scholarship fund, etc. Your focus as a dink is to give back something that will benefit future generations. Now, that all sounds great. There are some people called to a life without children, and somebody who is, going to take up the responsibility of caring for the poor, building roads in undeveloped countries, bringing internet to an undeveloped country, helping lift people out of poverty, taking your time and writing a book, curing cancer, doing the work that perhaps someone with children would have a little bit more trouble finding the time for and the resources for. Now, if that's your goal, then that is certainly applause worthy. But these people don't generally do that. That isn't the path that these people generally do. What they generally do is they travel. They are not going out into the middle of some desert tribe in Africa, helping bring them clean water, bringing them electricity, bringing them building roads and helping them to develop their agriculture, bringing them up to date, all that kind of stuff that you could be doing if you had a lot of money and you had the time and you didn't have kids and you could do. They don't do that. You don't see them focusing on that. What they're doing is they travel to the same places that 1 billion people have traveled before. They watch shows, they go to to Broadway shows, they go to France, they're everywhere that everybody or any other tourist would have been. And these dinks are definitely not going out building scholarship funds, writing books, doing things that will remind future generations that you were there. They are certainly not doing that. Now, the one thing I will mention, some of these dinks, they don't, obviously don't have kids and perhaps don't want kids. Now, some dinks are dink wads. Some choose to be dinks, and that's just going to be a couple that has no kids and they do what they do. But some people decide to be dinkwads. And if you're a dinkwad, what a dinkwad is dual income, no kids with a dog. So if you're a dinkwad, you don't have children, but you've decided to have a dog. And so what you'll see, some of these, a lot of times you'll be able to tell a dinkwad by their bumper stickers. So oftentimes you'll see, there's little stick figure families. They'll have a man and a woman, or who knows, dinkwads could be man and man, woman and woman, whatever. But then there'll be a dog. Or possibly you could be a dinkwhack. That's not written here. You could be a dinkwhack because you could have a cat instead of a dog. Dinkwads and dinkwhacks. So you could be a dinkwad if you have a dog. If you have a cat, you'd be a dinkwhack. If you have multiple, you have a lot of cats because some dinks. I guess it wouldn't be a dink. That would be a lonely person. Usually a woman that would have. So anyway, we'll stick with dinkwad for now because dinkwad sounds the best. It's an outstanding, accurate acronym. Now, if you have a dog, now that's some responsibility. So they want some responsibility in their lives. They want to take care of a dog, but they don't want the hassle of having to find a babysitter, or they don't want to deal with with the terrible twos, or or a teenager having a period, or a teenager, or just the angst of the teenage life. Dinks and dinkwads, the key to them is that they are focused on themselves. It is a selfish lifestyle, and it's still considered that mostly in society. Now, these people would beg to differ. I get that they believe that, by acknowledging that dinks and dinkwads believe that by acknowledging that they feel that they have a lack of parenting skills. They think that, oh, well, I'm doing society a favor. That's just an excuse. It's just a cop out. They want to act like they, maybe they had a rocky childhood and had a bad relationship with their parents. They don't want to do the same thing to a kid that their parents did. I mean, all you have to do is not do that. Maybe they feel that their financial obligations would just bring too much pressure. Blah 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 blah. It's all a bunch of excuses. They're contributing to the demise of society. I heard Matt Walsh talk about this. This is actually a really good way of looking, and you can apply this almost across the board to decisions, lifestyle decisions, I guess is the best way. And what Matt Walsh says is, if you're looking at making a decision, take the lifestyle that you're thinking. We'll just take this for example. So dual income, no kids. If you decided that you and your partner are going to be together and you're not going to have children, imagine if you followed that through societally to its logical conclusion. So imagine if everybody made the same decision that you did. The human race would be extinct in about 100 years, right? Because if everybody made the decision to just work, focus on themselves, and not have children, there would be no human beings. And so you can apply that same decision. If the decision you're considering making would be disastrous if everybody did it, maybe you want to think about not doing that thing, because that is something that a moron would do, and you're considering that as being your lifestyle. So, and that's why I think the DINK acronym is the best possible way to describe them. I will definitely use dink and dinkwads to describe dinks and dinkwads, because I think that's exactly what they are. They're dinks and they're dinkwads. And that will do it for tonight. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks for listening. I will probably, or at least possibly, be on the road again next week, coming from the great state of New York, at an undisclosed location in New York City, if I'm still there. Or actually, wait a minute, no, I'm not going to be in New York. I'm actually going to be in the great state of Virginia at another undisclosed super secret location. So I'll be coming at you from Virginia next week, and we will pick it up from there. So remember to subscribe, to like the show, to spread the word, and I will see you next week. Well,